The insurance company called to ask why I had approved a disability claim for a man I had never met. Using a signature that looked exactly like mine, they said the claim had been open since 1997. The man's name was Calvin Ross, and according to their records, I had certified that he could no longer work at the Franklin County water plant after an accident I did not remember. My name is Leonard Hayes. I was 69 when that call came, long retired from operating municipal water systems in central Ohio. For most of my career, I watched gauges, tested chlorine levels, and listened to pumps through concrete walls. Water plants teach you that trouble rarely announces itself. Pressure drops a little. A motor runs warmer. A valve closes slower than it should. The insurance representative emailed me a copy of the old claim. The signature was mine. Not similar. Mine. Attached to the form was a photograph from the plant clinic. Calvin sat on an examination table wearing a faded orange work jacket with reflective stripes across the chest. His right arm rested in a sling. I knew that jacket. It belonged to my shift supervisor, Frank Delaney. Frank had worn it the night a chemical feed line ruptured and sent 2 men to the hospital. He resigned 3 months later. We never spoke again. I told the insurance woman I had not signed the claim. She said, "Mr. Hayes, there's a witness line." "Whose name?" "Frank Delaney." I looked at Calvin's face again. Something about him felt familiar, but not from the plant. Then I noticed a small scar near his mouth. I had seen that scar in my own kitchen, years before the accident, on a man my wife introduced as her cousin from Kentucky. She said his name was Paul. The water plant sat beside the Scioto River, a long brick building with green pipes running overhead, and a smell nobody could describe politely. I started there in 1978. By the mid-90s, I was lead operator on nights. Frank Delaney supervised the whole shift. Frank was 5 years younger than me and impossible to hurry. He spoke slowly even during alarms, which irritated people until they realized calm was the reason he rarely made things worse. The orange jacket was part of him. He wore it over uniforms, dress shirts, even once over a suit after coming straight from a wedding. One sleeve had a dark burn mark from an electrical panel fire. The zipper stuck halfway, so Frank closed it with 2 brass snaps. "Throw that thing out," I told him, still visible from a distance. So is a traffic barrel. Traffic barrels save lives. My wife, Diane, liked Frank. Everybody did, though she said his kindness had an edge to it. "He helps before anyone agrees they need help," she told me. I wish more people had that problem. Easy to say when you're not the one being helped. Diane worked as a receptionist at a physical therapy office. We had 1 son, Michael, already grown and living in Cincinnati. Our marriage was solid, though solid is not the same as open. We handled bills, illnesses, parents, work schedules. We did not always handle fear. The man she called Paul came to our house twice. He was thin, nervous, and about 40. Diane said he was the son of an aunt I had never met. He needed temporary work. I mentioned the plant hired seasonal labor through contractors. A month later, a new maintenance helper joined Frank's crew, Calvin Ross. I never connected him to Paul because he shaved his beard, wore glasses, and kept his head down. Looking at the insurance photograph decades later, I saw it immediately. My wife had lied about who he was, and I had helped him get inside the plant. Diane had been dead 11 years. She kept almost nothing personal. No diaries, no bundles of letters. She believed paper should either prove something or be thrown away. I called my son, Michael. "Do you remember a man your mother called Cousin Paul?" He was quiet. "That depends why you're asking." That was not the answer of a man searching his memory. "You knew him?" "I met him once." "When?" "After the plant accident." I sat down at the kitchen table. Michael said Diane took him to a motel outside Grove City. Calvin was staying there under his real name, though Michael had not known it then. He looked sick, Michael said. His skin was red around the neck. One hand kept shaking. "Why were you there?" "Mom wanted me to drive him somewhere." "Where?" She changed her mind. I asked why he never told me. "Me Kate inside." "Dad." Mom made everything sound temporary. She said there was trouble at your job, and telling you too early would make you take responsibility for something you didn't do. That sounded like Diane. It also sounded like an excuse she knew I would hate. The insurance company gave me one useful fact. Calvin's mailing address on the claim belonged to a vocational rehabilitation center in Dayton. The center still existed. A woman there confirmed Calvin completed a 6-month training program in small engine repair after the accident. She could not give me records, but she remembered one thing from a note in his file. His tuition had been paid by the Franklin County Water Employees Relief Committee. We had no such committee. Frank invented that name. I called a former operator named Susan Keller, the only person from those years who still sent Christmas cards. When I mentioned Calvin, she said, "Frank told us not to ask." Us. Everybody on nights donated. To what? Calvin's treatment, rent, whatever he needed. Why would the crew help a contractor they barely knew? Susan hesitated. Because Frank said the accident was ours. I asked what she meant. She said, "Leonard, you really don't remember the bypass?" The chemical feed room used chlorine gas in those days. Everything was monitored. Exhaust fans, leak alarms, pressure switches. If gas escaped, the room should have sealed automatically while ventilation pulled it through a scrubber. The night of the accident, an alarm sensor failed during maintenance. I remember that much. Frank ordered the room cleared. Calvin stayed behind because he had dropped a wrench near the line. The fitting broke while he was reaching for it. Gas hit his face and chest before the emergency shower activated. The investigation blamed improper training and contractor error. Susan remembered something else. 2 weeks earlier, management had complained about nuisance alarms stopping production. A temporary jumper had been installed, so the feed system could keep running while electricians traced the fault. Who approved it? I asked. You did. No. You signed the shift log. I found a copy in the city archive. My initials appeared beside the note. Alarm interlock bypass for diagnostic operation. Restore after testing. I had written that. What I did not remember was leaving it in place. Susan said Frank discovered the bypass the morning after the accident. He removed it before investigators arrived. Why would he do that? To protect you? By destroying evidence? He said if management found your initials, they'd fire you and blame the whole thing on night operations. That was believable. Too believable. Diane had just undergone surgery then. Our health insurance came through my job. Michael had recently lost work and moved back home. Frank knew all of it. Susan said Frank told the crew Calvin had been injured because the plant valued output over safety. He asked them to help quietly. Did Calvin know I signed the bypass? Yes. What did he say? That you did it because Frank told you to. Frank had supervised the test. He could have ordered restoration himself. Instead, he removed the evidence and accepted no official blame. That did not look like sacrifice. It looked like control. Frank Delaney lived in Dayton. He was 82, widowed, and sharing a small house with his daughter. I called first. He answered with the same slow voice. Leonard, you knew this call was coming? Not today. I found Calvin's claim. A long breath. I wonder where that ended up. Did you forge my signature? No. Then how is it mine? Diane signed it. The room seemed to contract. She could copy it? She handled your insurance form for years. I knew that. I also knew I did not want it to be true. Frank said Diane came to him after the accident. Calvin was afraid to file a claim because his employment papers were false. He had used the name Calvin Ross, but his legal name was Paul Mercer. Her cousin, I said. No. Frank waited. Then he said, her brother. That was the first major twist. Diane had a younger brother she never told me about. Paul had been in and out of hospitals, shelters, and short-term jobs since his 20s. He struggled with alcoholism and periods of severe depression. Their father had thrown him out. Their mother sent money secretly until she died. Diane continued. She used her mother's maiden name and called him a cousin because she believed I would judge him before he had a chance to work. She was probably right. I said, Frank did not comfort me. You were hard on people who missed shifts. I ran a water plant. You ran your fear through a schedule. That sounded like something Diane might have told him. Paul took the plant job, hoping routine would help. Instead, he was injured because a safety system remained disabled. Diane forged my name on the disability claim because using Paul's false employment identity required someone inside the plant to certify him. Frank witnessed it. They protected Paul. They also tied my name to a lie I had never agreed to. I asked Frank why he resigned. He said the city intended to discipline a junior operator for failing to restore the alarm. Frank knew the operator had never been told about the bypass. So you left in protest? No. Again, he refused a cleaner answer. He resigned because he had ordered me to sign the bypass note. That part came back slowly. A late-night call. Frank standing beside the control board in the orange jacket. Me saying we should shut down the feed system until the sensor was repaired. Frank saying, "We lose the line tonight. They'll cut our overtime and outsource half the shift." He had gambling debts then. I never knew. Overtime mattered to him more than he admitted. "I told you the bypass would be removed before morning," Frank said. "And it wasn't. I forgot." "You forgot a chlorine interlock?" I went home because my wife called. My son had been arrested. I knew nothing about that either. Everyone had been carrying private emergencies into a room full of gas. Frank said when Paul was injured, he panicked. He removed the jumper, rewrote the maintenance timeline, and let management blame the contractor. Then Diane came to him. "She wanted Paul treated without exposing you," he said. "Or herself." "Yes. Why did you let her forge my signature?" "Because I owed Paul." "You owed me the truth." "I know." The words were quiet. I asked why he kept wearing the orange jacket after the accident. Frank looked down at himself, as if surprised it was not there. Paul grabbed it when he came out of the shower. His clothes were soaked. I wrapped him in it. That changed the photograph. The jacket had not belonged to Paul. It had covered him when he could barely breathe. Frank later gave it to him. The orange jacket first meant Frank's authority. Then it became the thing that carried Paul out. I still did not know what it meant to me. Paul Mercer was alive. Frank had his number but would not give it without asking. 2 days later, Paul called. His voice sounded older than Frank's. "Leonard Hayes?" "Yes." "This is Paul." I could hear a television in the background and someone moving dishes. "Where are you?" "Outside Cincinnati. Assisted living." "Do you remember me?" "I remember you telling me to keep my hands out of my pockets during an interview." That was me. I had believed hands in pockets meant attitude. Paul said Diane coached him through the interview. Frank arranged contractor paperwork. I approved him because he answered every question exactly the way I wanted. "I thought you were prepared." I said, "I was rehearsed." We met at the assisted living center the following week. Paul sat near a window wearing the orange work jacket. It hung loose, faded almost peach at the shoulders. The burn mark on the sleeve remained. "You still have it." Frank said it was mine. "Was it?" Paul shrugged. "It was the first thing anybody wrapped around me without asking what I had done wrong." That sentence stayed between us. He told me the gas exposure damaged his lungs. He worked small engine repair for years, relapsed twice, recovered again, married briefly, and cared for Diane during her final illness when I believed he was a hired aide from her church. I remembered him, a quiet man who came Tuesdays and fixed tea the way she liked. "You were in my house." "Yes." And she still didn't tell me. She wanted to. Everybody says that. Paul looked at me. She also liked having one person who belonged only to her. That was harder. Diane's secrecy had not been only fear. It gave her a private role. Protector, sister, the one person Paul needed. Love and control had become tangled, just as they had with Frank, just as they had with me. Paul asked whether I wanted the truth about the insurance form. I thought I had it. "You have Diane's part." He said Diane did forge my signature, but not without speaking to me first. I felt anger rise. "She never told me. She asked you in the hospital cafeteria." I remembered a conversation after the accident. Diane sitting across from me, Stirring coffee she did not drink. She asked what should happen to the injured contractor. I said the city should pay if we were responsible. She asked, even if he lied to get the job? I said, then he gets nothing. I had not known she meant Paul. She took that as your decision, Paul said. That was not informed consent. No, but she did ask. Yes. Then Paul told me something else. Frank's version of the accident was incomplete. Paul had noticed the alarm indicator was disabled before entering the room. He knew he was not supposed to retrieve the wrench. He went anyway, because the wrench was stamped with the name of the contractor who had hired him. Losing it would have exposed that he was using borrowed credentials. So you chose the risk. I did. And Frank forgot the bypass. Yes. And I signed it. Yes. The second major twist was not that one of us caused the accident. All three of us did. Frank protected over time and hid evidence. I accepted a dangerous shortcut because challenging him threatened the stability I valued. Paul entered a room he knew was unsafe to protect the false identity Diane created for him. Diane then forged my signature, partly to save her brother and partly because my own words convinced her mercy had limits. Two conflicting truths were both correct. They protected me without permission, and I had given them reasons to believe permission would never come. Paul touched the jacket's brass snap. Nobody came out innocent, he said. No. Good. I looked at him. Innocence wouldn't leave us anything to repair. Frank, Paul, and I met one final time at the old water plant. The city had converted part of it into a training center. The chemical feed room was gone, replaced by electric pumps and sealed liquid systems. Young operators moved through bright corridors, carrying tablets instead of clipboards. We stood where the old shower had been. Frank leaned on a cane. Paul wore the orange jacket. I brought a copy of the original shift log. We did not hold a ceremony. We talked for an hour, disagreed twice, and laughed once when Frank admitted he had never understood why management called every bad idea temporary. I apologized to Paul for judging a lie before understanding why he needed it. He said, I still lied. I know. Frank apologized for taking my initials as permission. I said, I still signed. We left it there. Diane could not speak for herself. I tried not to make her either saint or coward. She loved her brother. She used me. She believed she was protecting both of us. She also feared what honesty might cost her place in my life. Paul kept the jacket until winter. Then a package arrived at my house. Inside was the orange work jacket, washed and carefully folded. One brass snap had been replaced. Paul included a note. Too warm where I live now. You decide who it belongs to. I did not give it back to Frank. I did not hang it like a trophy. I keep it on a hook beside my workshop door. The orange has faded. The sleeve still carries a dark burn. Inside the collar, 3 sets of initials have been written over the years. FD, PM, and recently mine. Sometimes I wear it when I volunteer at the city's operator training program. The young workers notice the old reflective stripes and ask where it came from. I tell them it belonged to several men who all thought they were preventing a larger failure. Then I show them how to check an interlock twice. When I take the jacket off, the brass snaps make a soft click in the quiet room. One closes easily. The other still needs pressure.